Welcome to Catalyst Chats, where leaders spark ideas, share wins, and tackle people challenges that shape the future of work.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Catalyst Chats. I'm Lindsay Hammer, and today I have the privilege of speaking with Janice Kephart. She is the CEO and founder of ZipID. And Janice, I'd love it if you could just do an introduction for our audience.
Sure, I'd love to. So my name, obviously, Janice Kephart. Lindsay just said it. I have been in identity for 25 years, working directly with the federal government at a pretty high level, doing work around identity, the technology of identity, the policy around identity and biometrics, proposing laws, getting those laws implemented, seeing them implemented in programs to the extent that they hit Americans every day and internationally as well. My work was primarily around borders and securing borders. So trusted traveler systems, biometrics at the border, requiring passports for every U.S. person, the Real ID Act. These are all things that came out of my work from the 9/11 Commission. The 9/11 Commission was established after 9/11 to determine how the hijackers got in and stayed in the country long enough to commit 9/11, and then recommendations as to how to solve for the problems afterwards. I was on the immigration team, and what I learned, what was very clear to me was if we had understood the identity of these people and the intelligence associated with them, 9/11 wouldn't have happened. If we'd been able to keep them out of the country, they would have never been able to do anything inside the country. So we saw a lot of great things happen in biometrics and identity over the years. It started with the federal government, then it went out to international borders, and then it started sort of infiltrating the consumer product market. And over the course of time, with my work as a lawyer in immigration, etc., compliance law was something that sort of turned my head. I testified before Congress on a lot of issues, but E-Verify was one of them. And very early on, I was a strong proponent of E-Verify because E-Verify was the only program out there that could actually help employers comply with the federal law of the Form I-9, which we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I've worked in the private sector. I've worked in the public sector. I own my own company in the federal sector as well. We do just identity strategy for the federal government. So this is my expertise. And I've always been very public service oriented, and ZipID has really started out as a public service because I didn't think it was fair that employers were asked to comply with a law that they couldn't comply with, really.
Yeah.
There's no way for an employer to confirm identity. And I set out with ZipID to help ease the burden of the Form I-9. And so that's kind of what got me here today, 5
That's
years
awesome.
later.
Yeah.
Finally with a really great product I'm really proud of.
Yeah. Super fascinating hearing your experience. Thanks for sharing that. I feel like I've continued to learn a lot already just from reading some of your recent posts and just super cool work. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about ZipID specifically.
Okay, so ZipID is a software that is designed to deal with the Form I-9 itself. So the Form I-9 is required for every single new hire in the United States, about 68 million new hires in the United States last year, and every employer is supposed to comply. Now, not all employers know that they have to comply, but those who have ever had a visit from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is, a lot in the papers today because this administration has really pushed forward on worksite enforcement. Those worksite enforcement actions that end up with people being taken off of a work site because they are not authorized to work in the United States start with a Form I-9 audit. That's where it starts. So if you haven't completed the Form I-9 for your workers, or you've completed it with even a simple mistake, you missed a field, you didn't do it within the 3-day time limit, you have 3 days from the start of work. So either 3 days before or 3 days after that first day of work. If you don't complete it in time, that's a ding. The fines can be up to over $2,700. They've just been raised for a single form. So if you have 100, 200, 500, 1,000 workers, you've got a problem if you don't have a good Form I-9 solution in place. So with that said, the form requires you to confirm both identity and legal authorization to work, but there's no product on the market and no government program that actually enables you to do that. Me coming in as an identity expert, understanding what the E-Verify program can do and what it can't do from the inside out, I decided this was a problem that needed to be solved. So I set out to do ZipID. At first, 5 years ago, this was just a compliance effort, and it was to automate the Form I-9 and make it easy to understand. A lot of confusion, especially from foreign workers and also from Americans. If you try to read the 24 pages that are attached to that one simple form and understand what IDs, there are 180 pairs of IDs that are legitimately used for the I-9. Unless you're using a US passport, there are 180 pairs. There are probably over about 1,000 legitimate IDs because every state produces about 17 different varieties of legitimate IDs that you can use. So if you
I did
do
not know there was that many.
yeah. So there's no way employers and HR folks are not primed to be identify fraud in IDs. They're
Yeah.
definitely not, no person can do face recognition other than when you know somebody. But when you're looking at an ID and looking at a face, there's no way for you have about a 30% chance of getting it right, right?
Yeah.
So the ability of fraud to seep into the workplace, and now after COVID, with COVID, after COVID, a permanency of remote hires, and now in the surge of AI, you've got a double whammy of identity fraud coming at you now.
Yeah.
It's not just about illegal workers, illegal workers in the traditional sense of violating immigration law. It's not about that anymore, even though
Right.
you might think that from the news. That's not what this is about anymore. We now have
Yeah.
problems with deep fakes, which is a person impersonating somebody else with a fake identity. You can do that, for example, in a video conference. It's already been caught, actually. People masking their
Oh,
face,
wow.
masking their voice, trying to pretend they're somebody else. We've already had the Department of Justice prosecute last year an identity theft ring of 3 American women who had stolen thousands of American IDs, shipped them off overseas to our
Oh my
foreign
gosh.
adversaries, and had people log on the first day of work as an American when in fact they were Russian or North Korean. So we have,
Wow.
then proprietary information being held for ransom and that sort of thing. These people now have
Yeah.
access and they're applying as senior developers, that sort of thing. So identity theft and identity fraud has taken on, they're multifaceted now. It's not just an ID being a social security, and we'll talk about social security numbers and how
Yeah.
vulnerable those are. But it's not just stealing a dead person's social security name and number, which is 6 million of the identity fraud out there in the employer workplace
Wow.
now, right? It's not just that anymore. Now you have,
That's huge.
yeah, so there are different demographics of employers that are affected now, right? Because it's not just those who traditionally attract your foreign worker who might not be here legally. You are now dealing with your high tech sector, your finance sector,
Yeah.
and any other area where proprietary information might be accessible or
Yeah.
financial information might be accessible or personal information might be accessible, right? So dealing with the identity fraud piece has become extremely important. And so I've made the entire process what I originally said it would be. It's automated fully. It takes less than 3 to 5 minutes for the employee to do, 5 to 8 minutes for the employer to do. There's no identity information leaking anywhere. I'm very conscious of the privacy and security.
Yeah.
You don't have to know anything about the I-9. You just put in your information and go. And it fills in everything automatically into all the fields, so
That's
you don't
awesome.
have to think about it. So I've automated all of it. You can toggle to E-Verify and use E-Verify if you want. I purposely did not integrate with E-Verify because of the problems with E-Verify.
Okay.
And I really think, and I even give employers who decide to use face recognition. And I have had employers who have been subject to the type of fraud contact me, talent acquisition folks, actually,
Yeah.
who have been subject to the identity theft. I've had a few of them reach out to me who very much want to use the face recognition. I'm even embedded face recognition in the product. And it even gives a confidence score on the match and tells you what to do
Oh,
with that
wow.
confidence score. And I have identity risks also embedded in the programs so that, for example, if somebody's had to manually upload their ID and their selfie because they don't have a mobile phone, a smartphone, for example, we have a workflow that you can upload everything manually. But
Okay.
maybe that IP address for the selfie is different than the IP
Oh,
address
interesting.
for the ID. Well, then you might need to ask some more questions
Yeah.
of that person, right? So I give identity risk flags as well. It doesn't mean that it's not legitimate. It just means you might want to ask some more questions, right?
Makes sense.
So, and then everything is automated in terms of even the E-Verify piece. Once you get the information back from E-Verify, we auto populate that into additional notes. We also give notifications for within the 3 days. You can choose when you want to get your notifications, and an activity log so that if you're concerned about if you're on the cusp of that I-9 being done on time, you can check who sent that sent that invite out when. And it's transparent across all locations and all
That's
HR
nice.
users. So if you have multiple franchises or multiple offices, you have different HR people everywhere, you'll know exactly the user. The head admin can always go in and see what's been done in each
Wow.
location and
That's
where
really
you are,
nice.
to help you stay compliant along the way. And then we're going to build out a whole audit log as well, and that's coming next. And you'll be able to see, within a group of dates, all the I-9s that were done if you get audited or something like that. We will retain it for the amount of time required by law.
Okay.
And you can always access it through the portal. We also encourage employers, though, to download all that data because they're
Yeah.
really supposed to keep it. There, as a provider, I'm not supposed to be keeping that data. I'm
Got it.
supposed to be keeping it. So we encourage people to download it, but for the sake of audit, for the sake of retention, for the sake of support, we are retaining that data in an encrypted, secure AWS enclave. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
That's
kind of
awesome.
describes it. It's simply the workflow is simply the employer sends an invite to the employee. They open up their email, they go to the portal, they complete their section 1, they send it back to the employer with the auto-populated section 1. The auto-population comes from, we're pulling the fields off of the ID, we're populating it there. The employee is checking it, making sure it's correct, sending it back with his selfie. Then on the other side, we'll do the face recognition for the employer. And they
Okay.
begin that review. If they've chosen to do face recognition, they don't have to do it. And then they just finish it off. All the information on the user side about location and user information will auto-populate the bottom of section 2. So you don't have to re-sign it every
Okay.
single time. You have to re-sign it, but you don't have to auto-populate those fields. We do wet signatures because ICE requires that on either side. So
Okay.
it's a digital wet signature. So yeah,
Yeah.
with all the metadata
Interesting.
behind it. Yeah. So that's a long-winded explanation of what we're doing at
That's great.
ZipID. A
Yeah.
lot of work behind it so it can move really fast for the user.
Totally. Yeah, and you've talked about some of the current challenges. I'd love to understand more too, some of the trends that you're seeing, and then also for individuals like myself, a better understanding of like what is the I-9 form's role and identity verification.
Okay. So some of the challenges today, I think I hit on a little bit. I think the biggest one is that combination of remote work with AI.
Yeah.
It's changing the landscape. You cannot assume anymore as an HR person that the person before you, the resume you have is legitimate. And in fact, like Gartner reported like 3 months ago that by 2028, 1 in 4 job applicants will be fake.
Wow.
Either
That's
their
huge.
information will be fake, their identity will be fake, something will be very wrong
Yeah.
and not the person qualified or you think you're hiring. So it's ironic to me because HR deals with identity on a daily basis, but they're now going to have to be a bit of an investigator too.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's bad enough that the Form I-9's role is to verify, and I'm sorry I didn't say this at the beginning,
No, that's
is to
okay.
verify legal authorization to work in the United States.
Okay.
That's its purpose. It has to establish your identity along with whether you have the right documents. If you have a US passport, for example, you're already a US by default. They assume you're already, it
Yeah.
might not be true, but
Yeah.
they assume that you are a US citizen. And therefore, if you're a US citizen, you're automatically authorized to work in the US, right? What they're trying to get at is the foreign national population that comes in and whether they're authorized to work, right?
Okay.
And that's where the ICE enforcement comes in. And that's why they're able to use it as a basis for deportation. Because if you are illegally working in the United States, you are not authorized to work in the United States, and you are by default not authorized to be in the United States
Got
unless
it.
you have
Okay.
another status, like you're married to an American or something like that, that will allow you to stay here. But we've seen even issues with that as of
Yeah.
late. So that's the underlying bit. And then that challenge bit comes in with it's always been a challenge. So if you talk to, I did a lot of customer discovery while I was building the application because I didn't want
Yeah.
to assume that I knew what the problems were from an HR. Because the one, I have a lot of credibility, but the one thing I didn't have was I've never worked in HR. So I
Okay.
needed to understand what the HR issues were. And so I heard a lot of issues about I had the most interesting conversation with a woman who worked for the state of Florida. And she said they would have authorized reps go out and do the identity verification in person because for a long time prior to COVID, you had to do the Form I-9 in person, no
Okay.
matter what. So it cost companies a lot of money because if somebody was hired somewhere else where other than where their HR person was, they had to hire somebody to go
To
fill
go.
out the form and look
Yeah.
at the ID and look at the person. She said, there was no understanding of what IDs were actually legitimate because there are so many that are able to be used. They would accept just about anything. And
Interesting.
then they would intake that person would start to work and they would realize that they had all the wrong IDs. And it might just be like a language barrier issue.
Yeah.
It might just be that, but it might actually be a real problem.
Yeah.
So, that's that in of itself, that's the traditional problem with the I-9. Now you're
Okay.
adding in all the issues with AI and remote work. So
Yeah.
it's getting a lot more complicated. There's a lot more ways to commit fraud now, bottom line, than there was
Yeah.
before.
It feels like it's becoming easier and smarter.
Yes.
At
And
a
it's very easy.
rapid.
You can create fake IDs on ChatGPT. I've done it just to see what I can do. I've done it to even
Yeah.
test our system. Will it accept an AI generated image? You know,
Totally.
will it match an AI generated image? So it's
Yeah.
very interesting. Now, where AI comes to play on the positive side is AI is both in my biometric tool, my face recognition tool, and it's my optical reader tool. These are
Okay.
both very high end AI based technologies to help root out fraud.
Yeah. Yeah.
So AI is like, there are two sides of the coin with AI, the
Totally.
very positive and the very negative. And so we're very much seeing that concentrated around identity for sure.
Yeah. Well, and what are companies doing? Like, what are you seeing companies do to try to solve for
Not
some of these
enough.
issues? Yeah. You're
Not
investing
enough.
a lot of
Now, I
money.
know there are companies out there, and I give them a lot of credit,
Yeah.
who understand kind of where I am, that you can use the 49. It's not just for compliance and checking a box for the federal government anymore. Use it to your advantage. Use it to determine whether you trust the identity of that person and that they
Yeah.
are who they say they are or not. Because if you're doing it 3 days prior to start date, you can stop them from ever coming in the door.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it is a risk for
That's huge.
you to come on a construction work site because this person might have bad intent, or, can you imagine if we had the ability, like a terrorist was able to get onto a construction site
Yeah.
and blow stuff up, right? Or if we have already the espionage issue, which
Yeah.
is pretty serious,
Yeah.
right?
Just gaining access to systems and
Right.
information and yeah.
Exactly. And you have also a vulnerability of nation states we know who are trying to grab identity information. So if you are a large company or even a mid-size or smaller company that is highly proprietary information or any kind of trade secrets whatsoever, and you are not locking down your identity information, or trusting a third party to hold it for you who's got, I have a folder per company, a folder per person, locked under encryption, at
Yeah.
rest, in transit, the whole thing within my enclave. No identity information ever transacts outside of, there's no email. How many I-9s have gone over email with the ID images in
Yeah.
them?
I
I
think
have
about
my
some of
own
the things
employees do that on the
I
federal side. They do
totally.
that. I'm like, what are
Some
you
of the things I've
doing?
seen over email, I'm like, I
Yeah,
shouldn't have done that.
right. So now, HRISs are getting better about having internal portals and that sort of thing, but you're
Yeah.
still not seeing HR people are not generally, you need the security folks at a company and the HR people to come together to
Yes.
really, I think, create the framework for security of their employee data to the extent that they need to. And I think that starts with the Form I-9 because we're
Yeah.
getting pretty darn sensitive information with the Form I-9. I'm getting your name, your address, your ID information. I'm getting images of your IDs. I'm
Yeah.
taking a selfie as well because I'm doing, an employer has the right to understand what that person, whether that ID matches that person before they continue with the hiring
Right.
process. So, there's all of that. The trends I do see some of the companies that have been subjected to the espionage are moving towards wanting more security and starting that in the Form I-9.
Okay.
But it hasn't reached everyone yet. And I have also seen with this administration, there's a much bigger uptake of people knowing they need to audit their current I-9 situation
Okay.
because they're worried about ICE coming in and doing an enforcement action. There have
Yeah.
been some really hefty ones that have been really painful. And there was a gentleman in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, who lost, I have to look at the numbers, but I think it was 75 or 100 of his workers. He worked in food
Wow.
processing. He had been using E-Verify for years
Oh
and
my
he lost half
goodness.
of his workers because they weren't authorized.
I can't imagine the impact that that's had on their business.
Well, it's not just the financial impact and losing those workers, but it's your reputation.
Totally.
You know, all of a sudden you have a reputation for hiring illegal workers when you've been trying to be compliant. Those are the ones I'm most sympathetic with.
Yeah.
There are people out there who are trying to
Yeah. But
do the
when
wrong.
somebody thinks they're doing
Yeah.
it right, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like
they're doing what they
the
need.
enforcement action against the company that had been using child labor and claim that they've been using E-Verify all this time. You're like,
Oh gosh.
you can't possibly have thought that there's a lot of fraud with E-Verify too, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of fraud with the Form I-9s. There are employers who will fill out Section 1 and then just complete it themselves.
Oh,
So, and then they say they've complied with E-Verify, but all they've done is fill out the form, submit that information to E-Verify, get an authorization back, think they're covered, but in fact, they're actually doing something
interesting.
really nefarious and bad, right?
Yeah.
Like however anybody feels about illegal work in the United States, that's one thing, but child labor and slave labor, completely different story, right? Like
Totally.
that's not acceptable under any circumstances to any American, I hope,
Yeah.
ever. So there are ICE enforcement actions that are legitimate. There are other ones that probably are pretty over the top, but nonetheless, you can't do anything about it if you've been audited. You
Yeah.
are subjected to those fines. You're subjected to the reputational damage. Every worker offline per day is what you probably know that it's something like $400 a day you lose by every worker that's offline. So you
Yeah.
take that by 75. I don't know what the math is there, but it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it's really problematic and it's just not fair. It's
Yeah.
not fair to the employers.
Just feels so complicated.
Yeah, but so what took a lot of time was simplifying it, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to simplify this for everybody else because this is a huge, stupid burden that people shouldn't have. And in the meanwhile, let's actually make it work for them. Let's
Totally.
make this process provide a value to the employer and not just be a pain in the ass, which is what
Yeah.
it's been.
Yeah.
Ever since
Totally.
it
Yeah.
was established.
Really painful but important
Yeah,
process.
yeah. And
That's awesome.
make it fun and make it with great UI that is really user friendly and nice
Yeah.
colors. And, I've got my dashboard has, beautiful bees and flowers all over it.
I
Like,
know.
just like
I
have
love the
some
bee
fun.
image.
Yeah. So bring, I did counterterrorism and national security for years. Everybody was like, you're scaring people. I'm like, I'm just telling them the truth, right?
I think
I'd go testify before Congress, be like, no, this is a really bad idea because of XYZ. People are like,
totally.
you're scaring people. I'm like, well, I'm not meaning to. But on the other hand, I've had a lot of years of doing the hard side of
Yeah.
identity. And this is the opportunity to bring a little warmth to
Yeah.
identity, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Ignorance
want
is
to
not
hire
always
that
bliss,
person.
right?
Let's make this joyful. 95% of the time it's going to be legit. Let's just get it done. But let's just make sure that you're confident in your workforce. You're not going to lose that person in a few months and then realize
Totally.
the damage they've done.
Yeah, I
Right.
think
Like,
the confidence piece there that you're speaking to, like, yes,
yeah.
it might be
Yeah.
scary to know all the things that can happen or could be
Exactly.
going wrong, but to feel more confident as a business, as a company, that
Right.
to me is, I think, a game changer.
I hope so. I hope so, Lindsay. Like, I really hope that it is. And so I'm excited about where this can go,
Yeah,
and what we can do with it. And I also want employers who are out there using E-Verify. Like, I am a huge proponent of E-Verify, but it needs to frickin' do its job.
yeah,
And it's not doing its job, and it's duping employers into thinking that that person is authorized to work when in fact, and that their identity is who they say they are,
yeah,
when in fact it's not doing that at all.
right.
So I'm very frustrated with E-Verify at this point. And, for example, the only identity information ID they actually check, and it's not even the ID itself, it's the social security number and the
Mm,
name attributed to it. But if you've been on the black market and acquired one of the 6 million
yeah,
dead people's ID, social security numbers, that's going to make it through. No
yeah,
problem.
totally.
And there's no check of state driver's licenses. Now, they will tell you they are doing it, but I know that they're not. I know that they're not, unless in the last couple of months they've brought it back online. But it was
Yeah.
offline. They weren't checking any driver's
Oh,
licenses.
wow.
Driver's licenses, I know from my work inside the government,
Yeah.
it's about 70% of the E-Verify traffic.
Wow.
So if that's not being checked, and about the next 20% is the US passport. So driver's license aren't being checked at all. That's 70% not checked.
Yeah. That's
20% US
massive.
passports, if you're not familiar with the Verify, all they're doing, they used to check the passport number, that passport number was actually issued by the US State Department
Okay.
when that passport was issued. They're not doing that anymore. They're saying,
Interesting.
is this photograph you're seeing on the US passport that this person has provided you look like the same photograph we have, but it's not checking the actual fields?
So somebody could just steal an image in that case, and yeah, wow. Okay. That
Yep.
definitely seems problematic.
It's pretty problematic. So E-Verify is not doing the job. And I just think Trump is actually doing people a favor in this regard by showing other employers E-Verify isn't really working,
Mm,
because these employers are getting iced and they're losing their workers, and they've been using E-Verify
yeah,
for years.
thinking in most cases, hopefully thinking that
Thinking,
it was
so it's a
working.
false sense of security.
Yeah,
And I would like employers to actually really feel confident in who
yeah,
they're hiring. And you
yeah,
only do that if you can do a combination. It has to be a multi-factor check. So our optical reader tool will not read the ID if it determines it's fake. So which
okay.
is it just won't read it, and it will say
Yeah,
use something else.
yep,
So that's one way. And then the other way is the face recognition. We're doing the the ID image against a selfie, and we're giving you that confidence score. If you're using E-Verify, you have to do a video conference. So I have another blog where I talk about how to prepare for that video conference.
yeah,
Don't just use it as a check mark. Use it as the opportunity to really verify that identity as best you can looking
right.
at somebody on video,
Yeah,
right? But, and one little trick that people can do that will help somebody who has masked their face, which is called the deep fake thing. When
yeah,
they've masked their face, if you ask them to hold up their ID, usually that will pull the mask off, and
interesting.
you can actually see who's behind the mask. So if
Huh,
if nothing happens, then you're legit. If you've got,
yeah,
ask people to hold up the ID. That's just like
yeah,
one little tip you can do, but
yeah,
pretty important. And that will be as we grow, because we just launched this past spring. But as ZipID grows, I will add a video conference tool in, and I will have an
very cool.
anti-spoofing, anti-deepfake, anti-morph, whatever
Yeah,
variety of identity fraud you're committing. We will have anti that in the new
yeah,
product. And
that's
because I've been in
awesome.
the biometrics community for so long, and I used to work for one of the big biometrics company, I know what's happening everywhere in biometrics, so I can pull on the right vendor to
Yep,
get the latest
yeah,
and greatest tech, which is what I've done so far, but what I will continue to do.
yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
I'm giving people a lot of confidence in their identity for their new hires, there is always more to do, and there's always going to be the fight
Yeah.
to get in front of the state, trying to say I have 100% solution. But I'm
It seems like you've got a really good
93%
grasp.
further than any of the other solutions out there
Yeah,
right now. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, I'd love to understand, like, what's your goal for ZipID in the next 2 to 5 years?
Oh, I want to be so what's interesting is that originally when I thought this is the perfect partner for a human resource information system company, right? And there are 180 of them or whatever. I want to be partnered with Workday and Bamboo. I still do. But what's interesting is that I've had applicant tracking system companies and more than that, background check companies
Okay.
coming to me really interested because they do identity verification
Yeah.
and they're seeing that the ID part of what I'm doing, and they always need a Form I-9 solution. And the background check companies right now, without saying names, do not like at all their current background check, their current Form I-9 solution. They
Yeah.
consider it backwards. It has bad UI. It's not seamless. I mean, I've had people come say, "Oh my God, yours is like 20 leagues ahead of what is out there right now."
That's awesome.
Happily use your product. So that is really, really nice. So I think the B2B integration is really, really important because that's a channel
Yeah.
partner to get us to the most folks as possible. And so I'm excited about that B2B prospect. Still want to engage employers directly. There are a lot of small to mid-sized companies out there that,
Yeah.
don't even necessarily use an HRIS, or they have one HR person, right?
Yeah.
What is it, like one HR person for every 200 employees or something like that? So if they're a smaller company, they might only have a fractional HR company, or maybe they have a PEO, right?
Yeah.
As well. And the PEOs are funny because they're like, well, we'll administer the Form I-9, but we're not responsible for it. But if you're holding the Form I-9, aren't you kind of responsible? No, we're
Right.
not.
Oh, there he is.
The PEOs to me are sort of do this dance around the
Yeah.
Form I-9 because they don't want to be liable around it, but they generally do administer it. So yeah, I think PEOs would be a great place to be as well. And then, a few of these companies that I know have experienced the economic espionage already. And construction companies, we've seen a lot of interest from construction, food and restaurant, financial services.
Okay. Yeah.
Across a lot of demographics, we're seeing interest. The fact of the matter is, it's kind of there's equity across all of this because everybody has to do it.
Yeah.
It's just that
Totally.
some demographics of employers are hit harder by this than others,
Yeah. That makes
right?
sense.
The construction companies, especially, I mean, the food processing, construction, these are areas that have traditionally been enforced against
Yeah.
with the I-9, right?
Yeah.
So they're more sensitive to it, and they probably have better processes in place already because of it, but they can up their game,
Yeah.
you know,
That makes
and
sense.
stop having this heartache after they've already hired somebody,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I
And
think that
even the
piece, right? Like,
process
before it happens,
yeah,
that's huge.
and even so, the one thing that I learned from my counterterrorism work with the federal government was that even a terrorist, like any type of criminal activity, they always want the easiest route to do it. So if it's hard and they think that somebody might catch them, they're much less likely to do it.
Yeah.
So even having a solution like ZipID in place, them knowing, like in the front of it, I say, now's the identity portion. We're going to take a selfie. We're going to take a even that could be enough for them to just turn around and run. And then that's just over. Like you're
Totally.
not
Yeah.
dealing with that anymore. There is a huge deterrence effect to having security in place. I learned that from my work and, on the 9/11 Commission, doing borders for years
Yeah.
and hearing what the terrorists would say. You would hear them say things like, well, I think that XYZ is happening over there, so I'm gonna do this over here.
Interesting.
They're just fraud. Terrorists are just criminals in a worse guise than other criminals.
Yeah.
Really, that's really what it comes down to. They just have a political slant to their criminality. That's
Yeah.
really, in my view, having done it for years, that's what terrorism is to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So you're going to find the same types of fraud everywhere. The more sophisticated, smarter ones who know how to use, there are two types now, though. They're the ones that are super sophisticated, right? And then they're the ones that aren't. But what AI is allowing you to do is you don't have to be that sophisticated anymore,
Yeah.
right? You're more likely to get caught because you're probably not doing it very well. but you can still try. Talent acquisition companies, talent acquisition firms really have their hands full with fake job applicants and everything else. I think background check companies are going to become ever more important. And
Yeah.
solutions like mine that address some of these issues up front make compliance as easy as possible, check, but also help the employer out and verify that identity check, right? So that's really what is going on here. And I hope the trend goes to more understanding of the identity issue in hiring.
Yeah.
It's not just about their qualifications anymore. It's actually about
Yeah.
also who they are. Are they who they
That
say
makes
they are?
sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's more to it now. And I just want to make it easier for employers to get all that
Yeah.
done.
I think that's great.
Yeah. So
Well, and I'd love to, as the CEO and founder of ZipID, I'd love to understand too, like, what are some of the metrics that you focus on as a business leader?
Well, of course, there's revenue, right? But
Yeah.
for me, I've always been a thought leader, right? Like I've very much been a known thought leader in identity for a very long time
Yeah.
and still am. And so for me, changing the way for me for years, it's been changing policy, changing law, implementing programs, getting stuff done, right?
Yeah.
With this, it's a little softer in this market. To me right now, I'm trying to educate. I'm trying to educate why you need to be thinking differently.
Yeah.
I'm not a person that's ever been driven by money. I've always been driven by public service,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
which is
awesome.
why putting, me founding this has not been easy
Yeah.
financially to do, but I have felt absolutely bound. I've done my work in national security. Now I can do my work in economic security. I can do a public service. And then I can also be the entrepreneur I love to be, take that risk, do something really valuable for
Yeah.
my American colleagues across the board. So,
That's
my
awesome.
metric for myself, I think, and for ZipID is one, we want to be a super successful company. We want to be the place people go for the best in compliance of the Form I-9 that there is. I
Yeah.
want that because I have very high standards for myself and for my company. But I also want people to understand why they're doing it and think they're doing it with value. So it's a little bit of changing hearts and minds around this. So that's
Okay.
the
Yeah.
other piece of this. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, anything else that you'd like the audience to know today, either in general about identification or ZipID?
Yeah, so we have on LinkedIn, of course, there's my page, Janice Kephart. I'm easily found on LinkedIn. I would love people to come find me there. We have a ZipID page as well. I would love people to follow it because that's where we're putting out our new features and my educational blogs. And then we have zipidapp.com, zipidapp.com, zipidapp.com. It's getting a lot of traffic, the
Awesome.
website. And I'm really hoping people are really reading the blogs because I've always been known as a bit of a maverick in the federal government because the reason I get respect is because people know I tell the truth,
Yeah.
whether it hurts or not. It doesn't matter who the administration is, if it's Republican or Democrat, I'm there to tell the truth and then to try to solve the problem. So I would love people, and I would love people to come talk to me. I always want to continue to do customer discovery. I want to understand what the problems are. I want to understand what's the best way to do integrations and that sort of thing. So I'm doing everything right now. I'm doing product, I'm doing the business side, I'm doing
That's
all of
super
it.
cool.
The only thing I'm not doing on hand is coding, but I'm pretty much doing
Okay.
everything else, all the marketing, everything. I would love customers, of course, but I
Yeah.
also want to continue the dialogue, right? I want to be able to speak, I guess one of the other metrics is I would love to do one thing I've never done. I've done tons of national TV for years, every major network,
Yeah.
testified before Congress 19 times, but I've never done a TED Talk. I want to do a TED.
Okay.
That's
All
what
right.
that's what I want to do is I want to do
Let's
a
start
TED Talk.
manifesting
I
that
want to
for
get
you.
it in
That'd be
front of
great.
yeah, I want to be a keynote at SHRM and talk about identity, what identity is
Yeah.
today and why people need to think about it differently than they have all these years. They
Yeah.
know it's there, but we need to get people to understand what the issues are with the Form I-9, how to use the Form I-9 to their advantage, and what identity means today in HR. And
Yeah.
that is that is the TED Talk I would love to do.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I saw
SHR,
your
like conference talk, whatever. That's what I would love to be doing
Yep.
with.
And you have an upcoming conference. I think I saw Identity
Oh, I
Week.
have 3, yeah, I have 3.
Awesome.
So, they're all in my world of identity, though, they're not in so, we're doing a panel for the federal government on deepfakes. We'll be
Okay.
talking a little bit about the hiring issue there. I'm doing face recognition access control with major sports, another event, so I've got the Astros, the Phillies, the
Oh, cool.
Falcons, and LA Soccer, so I'll be hosting them, talking about consumer use and acceptance of
Yeah.
biometrics, and then I'll be talking about DNA, forensic DNA at another conference.
Oh, cool.
Like, yeah,
So
but I
fascinating.
would love to also be doing the HR conferences as well, and that's really kind of where I need my trajectory to start moving towards, is more
Yeah.
towards that than what I've been doing for years. I still run the Biometric Center Agency Working Group for the federal government. We have about 40 programs from across government. I'm the lead
Okay.
for it. So, if people have questions about identity too, please come to me,
I'm
write
coming
me
to
on
you
LinkedIn
for
or
sure.
whatever. Like, I can answer quite a bit. And if I can't answer it, I'll send you to the right
Yeah.
person to get it
That's awesome.
answered.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I would love, and love to keep talking to everyone out there in the HR business community, as well as that entire ecosystem that surrounds HR.
Yeah.
Like, that is a place I have so much to learn still from that community. And so I might know what I know in identity and compliance and legal issues, but the actual HR world, I can always learn more.
Yeah. Well, I say the same for myself too.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Totally.
what's your goal for the next like year or 2 years for yourself?
That's a great question. I mean, right now my biggest focus is on networking and just getting to interact with industry leaders in HR, talent acquisition, and really just companies that employ people, right? I'm focused on
Yeah.
people problems and how do we reduce some of that burden and make companies more employee centric. I think that's something that there's a balance of how do we make things easier for the company, but then also make sure that we're not losing
Right.
that like human aspect for employees because
I
I
think
think that
that's
can,
true. I think that's true. And
yeah,
part of that is what their onboarding process is like, right?
totally.
So the I-9
Such a
is
big
often a
piece of it.
place that's a point of friction, right?
Yep.
Either because they don't understand it or it's just a pain in the neck and they don't see any use in it. But
Yep.
an employee using like a ZipID that verifies your identity and your identity is being protected. It's not
Yep.
just the employer determining fraud, your identity is being protected. You are
Totally.
telling the employer, this is who I am. And so that's where you're building that trust,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
that's
you're creating an
that's what
onboard
makes
experience.
scarier.
Plus, you're making it so they don't have to understand anything. Literally, we just ask questions, you fill it in, or you upload your data, and that's it. I can't wait. I'll send you an invite and you can see, well, you could do it as an employer and you can do it as an employee as well.
Yeah.
But I can send you an invite just to understand the employee
Oh, that'd be
workflow.
awesome. I'd love that.
Yeah.
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 So I
I'm
think
happy to do
too,
it.
to your point, like as an employee, being asked to fill out something online now, like the number of scam calls that I get on a daily basis, there's a distrust that's happening. And I think that ZipID really is
Right.
a game changer in that.
Well, that's actually a really good point I hadn't really even thought of, because the way it works is the employer goes to the dashboard, and once they're in the dashboard, they just invite the new hire. So that email is coming from the employer's email and
Yeah.
it's asking you to activate an account and it's taking you straight to our portal. There's nothing else going on. It is
Yeah.
very straightforward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
That definitely
yeah,
adds a
that's
level of
that's
confidence.
that's true. And as long as they're in the onboarding process, they'll completely understand where that's coming from. So yeah, that's another good point. So employee centric, I think, is really, really an important piece of all this. What do you think like the top 3 things are? Because there's so much of this like on LinkedIn and stuff, people
Yeah.
talk. Like, what are the top most important things for hires today, do you think? Flexibility, I know, is one of them.
That's a great question. I definitely think flexibility. Life is becoming too difficult to not have flexibility. I think it makes employees more productive when they have flexibility. And I think that companies are afraid of that a little bit. because there's a little bit of like checks and balances, it seems like, or like who's going to make the first move and trust in each other. But I think if they
Yeah.
allow employees to have flexibility, then employees can really do their best work when it
Yeah.
fits into their day.
I think it comes down to an employee who's allowed to be flexible feels respected. They feel like their
Totally.
time is respected. They feel like their work ethic is respected. There's automatic trust that comes with enabling flexibility.
Yeah. It's more of a partnership, I think.
Yes, yes. And there's real value in that, I
Yeah.
think, for sure.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and the fact that we've got such a gig economy now, I mean, whole companies now are just gig. I mean, I am right now because I don't have any choice, but I would love to be able to be in a place where I could hire people and create a culture of trust and loyalty around
Yeah.
that, which I know is incredibly, maybe that's just pie in
Yeah.
the sky
I think it
right now, but at this point.
makes employees want to stay, and retention is a huge challenge for companies. So I think that
Yeah.
those two really go hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think, yeah, having processes in place that are seem less burdensome are is really helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's really a lot of what I want to focus on too is how do we give people time back and reduce some of the friction in the day to day of things that where it makes sense we can use automation and helping companies get comfortable with that because I think AI is scary, but at the same time I think it's here and it's coming and I want to be at the forefront of that and helping people get comfortable with it because it can really make an impact in their productivity as well.
I think so as well. I don't disagree. I think, yeah, I think this is a fascinating world we're in right now about how much
An interesting
employment is
time.
changing. I mean, everybody kind of initially thought it was COVID that changed everything, but
Totally.
it did change a lot of things, but there is AI has changed it just as much.
Yeah. And I think we'll continue to change it even more in the next
Yeah.
2 to 3
Yeah.
years. It'll be really interesting.
And the issue of retention and flexibility, I have watched firsthand my close colleagues in the US government right now being forced to return to work full
Yeah.
time in buildings that are not meant to house that many people because they were built on people being rotating in and out in a hybrid kind of
Yeah.
work environment. Now being called back to work, the attrition that has happened because of it, and it's intended attrition, right? But the morale, the ability to get work done, it's all absolutely nosedived.
Yeah.
People
I
being
agree.
treated like cattle is no way to build productivity. And the thing about
Mhm.
it is that people may disagree with me or not, but having worked in government for the last 25 years and around government for the last 25 years, there are a lot of truly dedicated, smart, hardworking people in government who are very even keeled. They do not buckle to political this or that because they're there in a usually a bureaucratic position of some kind, which is not necessarily a bad thing. There are processes in place that are immune to politics. They're supposed to be
Yeah.
immune to politics. They're
Right.
supposed to be the way the gears run. Now, there's there's a lot of stuff that shouldn't happen in government that does, but there's a lot
Yeah.
of really great people in government who do work really hard, and especially the people that rise further to the top are people who are really cream of the crop people most of the time.
Yeah.
And seeing their entire demeanor destroyed by what has happened
It's really
is
hard.
more evidence of what the private sector, I think, needs to do. It's the lesson learned in the most negative way, right?
Yeah.
It's the abusive parent you never want to be, right? It's that kind of lesson learned. Yeah.
And it's so interesting with COVID because it feels like COVID propelled this hybrid work and flexibility forward. But then post COVID, it feels, in my opinion, like we've gone backwards quite a bit because now, to your point, right, like of this full RTO, we used to have more flexibility. It might not have been defined as hybrid
Right.
work or, as clearly X number of days in the office versus X number at home. But it certainly feels, to your point of like the abusive parent, like this kind of big brother effect to it of like
Oh,
now we're
yeah. I
being
mean,
monitored and we're being
people,
watched.
my
And
colleagues have been told to return to work 9 to 5 no matter what. Doesn't matter if they have childcare issues. Doesn't matter if
Yeah.
they live an hour away. DC traffic is just as bad as New York or LA.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
it's
totally.
horrible.
Yeah.
So that return to work is really, really painful for people.
Yeah.
You know, PhDs with young children who are like the most phenomenal innovators in government
Yeah.
crying in the bathroom because they think they're going to have to leave their job because they don't have anybody to take care of their children at 3 to 5 in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
So it's just it's a really horrible situation to be in, and I do hope that employers are looking at that from that perspective.
Yeah.
If you are asking people, and there are some big employers who have required people to return to work, like Amazon, right?
Yeah.
What are you really telling them? I understand you want to require everybody to show up for Monday morning syncs. Everybody has to be there. You have a whiteboarding afternoon. Everybody needs to be there.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, not necessarily necessary,
Yeah.
right? I can work 12 hours a day because I'm at home, right? I
Yeah.
don't. I try not to, but I
That's good.
I
That's
do
good.
have those
But
days.
it can be hard to turn it off when it's
Right.
so accessible.
That's true too. So, yeah, I mean, do I miss going in and having colleagues? Yeah, I do. I do miss that. And
Yeah.
so I think that hybrid environment allows that in a way that other things, others don't. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting world we live in. I'm taking a little bit of it. I'm trying to make it easier, simpler, better for
Yeah.
employers out of all the other strangeness that's going on in the employment market.
Totally. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I feel like I learned a lot today, and I'm really grateful for your time and your willingness to share and help educate. I think it's a really fascinating topic, and I think it's becoming more and more important with everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. I'm really glad you found me and you reached out to me. I would love to keep in touch and figure out if there's a way we can kind of sync up and work together a little bit here.
Absolutely.
I could use your help too. I don't know the HR market. I don't.
Yeah.
So talking to you further and maybe off air, off camera, we can do that and have a more of a sync. And maybe you can help me out with reaching this audience in the right way.
That'd be
People are
great.
paying attention, but it's hard to make progress. So yeah, I would love to keep in touch.
Me too. Yeah. That sounds great. I'd love maybe we can set up a call for sometime. I know you've got a couple events going on soon, so your
I
calendar's
don't
probably
have
pretty busy,
August is quiet. It's all
but okay.
those two conferences are in September.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, if you have time next week, I'd love to just connect on a call and we
that
can
would be
chat
great.
through. Okay, awesome.
That would
Thank you for listening to Catalyst Chats. Like, share, and don't forget to follow.